It may be truly asked of us whether or not it can be taught, whether fourth way can be taught uh, to anyone such as one might learn any other subject. As you know, fourth way is comprised of a system, often called the system, the method, sometimes the work. And the design of it is such that Gurdjieff looked upon the fakir or the yogi or the monk and saw that these ways of development of man to become more human, he talked of unity, which, as we know, means that the centers of man become unified. But really what that means is to become more human, to become human. And that throughout history, those ways were methods, or rather perhaps disciplines, to achieve that. And he saw in a world, in a modern industrial world, a result of war, an increase in population, belligerence among nations, that a way had to be brought to the West, else the West would become a sterile wasteland, as T.S. Eliot put it. And that those ways of the monk and the fakir and the yogi, while valid, were only for such a few, that a new method, a synthesis as it were, had to be developed, and that is what we call the fourth way. Now, briefly, I want to talk to you about whether the fourth way can be taught, for I would maintain that it cannot be. And that begs the question why we would even talk about it as we talk today. But leave that aside, for there are other purposes for that. I would relate to you just a little story about swimming. Let's consider swimming. All right? Let's say I gave you a book. You had never swum. You had no idea how to do that, but you wanted to. And I said, well, let me teach you how to swim. And I gave you books. You read the different strokes and ways of moving your arms and legs, and you took a course perhaps, but not getting into the water. You just studied. You obtained knowledge of how to swim, and we could use this analogy and say it just became more and more exact. We looked at the mechanics. Perhaps you had access to high-speed photography and computers, and you could pinpoint every motion, and you studied these motions and the Newtonian physics of the forces of how to swim. And you consulted other people, and they talked to you about the experience of swimming. And your knowledge would be great. Your knowledge of the technique. And in your mind, you would believe that you could swim. And yet, say you had never been in the water, you had never gone into the water. And that person could claim to be an expert in swimming. In our world, everything is specialized. Everything becomes more and more intensely reduced into its component parts until everything is supposedly known. But in swimming, or it could be any sport really, but let's say swimming, and then a person, a child, an adult, or whatever, or whomever, just walks to the water and goes into the water. And he swims. Now, who is taught then to swim? Is it the person who has learned all of that knowledge and discussed and read? But it's the person who simply walks into the water and finds the courage or has the desire or the need to swim, who obtains the ability to swim. Now, the point of this, it may seem to be laboring this point, but in our world, especially in the Western world, the mind is considered the superior to the body, and that knowledge, all education is the accumulation of knowledge, which progresses us in a linear way toward the goal, and that goals are the way of bettering man. But we can look at something as simple as swimming. So if fourth way is analogous to swimming, what point then to talk about fourth way? Can I convey to you how to do fourth way? I cannot. I cannot. I cannot teach you, though I would presume to be a teacher. I cannot teach you. Gurdjieff, I would hold, would say something to the effect of, one must have a magnetic center. And what he means by that is something in the person that still wants to grow the essence. And the essence is being. And being is the level of your centers and how unified they are into becoming human. And he posits that man is not yet fully human as he is. Man perhaps was at a time when he was connected to nature. The foods which he intakes, and by food I mean in the esoteric sense, in the Gurdjieffian sense, foods are the energies and the impressions that we obtain from nature. And these give us the energy to grow into what we potentially are. If those are deprived, man becomes just mere ego. His self or selves are unknown to him. He believes he is unified, but he is not. And he crystallizes. He crystallizes into a self and says, this is who I am. And of course, the culture embraces this crystallization because we are so driven to sell our labor. We have to have money to eat, to have a family, to provide money for our loved ones. How then can one find the time or the desire to develop interiorly, to become more human? And one becomes crystallized, and it is too late. The magnetic center is not there. So fourth way is like swimming, and one must have a desire, a magnetic desire, which draws one toward this teaching. The adherents of fourth way, and there are schools, and I was blessed to have been in a school, but they are hidden, and for the most part that I know of, do not engage in the world on the world's terms. And so fourth way is truly esoteric. Perhaps there is a way to engender a mass magnetic center it's not known. Perhaps that is the endeavor that we have to quest for, right? A quest. But it remains to be seen. So anyway, fourth way cannot be taught. No teacher can through books, although they are useful, teach you fourth way. It is something that one has to do. One has to do fourth way, paradoxically, when one cannot do. Gurdjieff says that man cannot do anything. Jesus says, man knows not what he does. And that is the meaning of that Gurdjieff comes to that. And he says, man's actions are not really doing anything. He just does these without anything behind them. And that has led to the destruction of the world, of nature, and the ongoing destruction of nature, and cruelty to animals, and cruelty to man. Fourth way has the potential to bring man back to humanity and let him become, again, as he was, human, and love the world again. So consider swimming, and consider that swimming means taking a risk and jumping into the water.